Is the watch worth the cost? Yeah, probably. Would I buy it again? Probably not. Hey guys, it's Alex with Hammond Watch. I'm here today with the Seiko Prospex SPB207. This particular design within the Prospex lineup I see commonly referred to as the MarineMaster 200 or MarineMaster Reduced. This variant in particular is the 140th anniversary. It is a limited edition watch, but we'll touch on that a little bit later. It features a very nice, deep, kind of British racing green dial, and I thought it was one of the more attractive watches I had seen released from Seiko last year. And in general, I was excited to get one in person, although I did have to do something I don't often do and pay retail at $1,350 USD. You know, putting out that type of cash, I really did have high expectations. And I think in some aspects it lived up to the billing, and I was disappointed in others. So I want to share it with you guys today so you can make up your own mind. We'll start with, to me, one of the highlights of the watch, which is the sizing. You have a nice case size at 42 millimeters, relatively compact height at 13.58. You'll notice immediately that this coin edge bezel sits very prominent on top of the case. It's roughly 4 millimeters tall. There's a ton of surface area to grip. It is a pleasure to operate, and I think overall really aesthetically pleasing on the side profile. The crown, you're looking at 6.5 millimeters, great gripping, great positioning, a pleasure to operate. Although it is a little surprising to not have a signed crown at this price point, honestly that's one of the smaller gripes that I feel I have with this particular piece. When measuring lug hole to lug hole, you're looking at 41 millimeters. If you take it all the way out to lug tip, you're looking at 48.8. You have a standard 20 millimeter lug width, so no issues with strap changes. And this watch actually does come with a green silicone strap that we'll touch on later. The bracelet tapers down to just under 18 millimeters and then jumps back up to 19.5 at the clasp. It is fold over 2-button deployant with very nice milled hardware. A couple of things I don't love on the bracelet. One is going to be the diver's extension. This is a very nice, well put together bracelet, very nice hardware, and then you have this pressed metal extension. You know, I understand why they put these on ISO certified divers. It just always feels like a bit of an afterthought, and in general I'd prefer it not be here. That said, it being thin pressed metal, at least it doesn't affect the comfort of the watch. It doesn't throw the weight off and you don't really feel this on your wrist. Also, you have push pins. I understand that that's not a huge concern. I do think that more and more nowadays, when you're paying more than $1,000 for a watch, that the expectation is becoming that you really should have screw links. The bracelet was incredibly easy to size, but it just feels a little bit cheap. I would have really preferred to have screw links. But outside of that, really is one of the better bracelets I've experienced on any Seiko. Beautiful brushing. You have a nice polished section on the mid-link and kind of the in-between spaces that gives you just a little bit of light play. You have a nice polished edge to the clasp. Overall, I think it's phenomenal, although I do tend to prefer the strap it came with just a little bit. The screw-down case back used is very typical of Seiko. General specifications and branding, a few references to the materials used, identification numbers, and then you'll notice that they do hint towards limited edition, although these are not numbered pieces. As we move in closer on the dial, this is where I get a little bit more conflicted. I love the handset. I think the hour and minutes hand being half brushed, half polished, looks phenomenal. You get a great deal of light play. It looks very refined. You never really lose the hands in the light. And I love the seconds hand. That paddle is very classic Seiko. The red dot is a very nice accent, and I think that gold always balances very well when set against a dark green dial. One of the aspects of the dial that I was not overly thrilled with are the lume plots or indices. They appear to be pressed in from the back of the watch. It's not a huge deal. On a watch of this caliber, you would really expect to see applied indices, and these may be just very thin applied indices, and if they are, and you know that for a fact, please correct me in the comments below. Just with my experience with Seiko divers, these appear to be pressed in and then painted. A little bit disappointing. You'd like a little bit more refinement on a watch of this caliber, but I understand that may not be a big deal to some. Moving past the indices, we go to a pretty common issue with Seiko divers, and that's the alignment. The alignment on this one is not awful. It's pretty close. But, again, paying over $1,000 for a watch, you'd really like for things to be perfectly aligned. Also, I think the bigger gripe for me, if you look at the triangle, the very top of my triangle, you'll notice there's a little bit of a gap where paint hasn't fully filled in the bezel. And it's a pretty big disappointment. You know, it's not something that's hugely noticeable when you first pull it out of the packaging, but it's something that once you notice it, you really can't unsee it. Now, every time I look at the dial of my watch, my eyes tend to float up and see that little gap where paint is missing. And it's just a bit of a bummer because it also reminds you that the alignment's not perfect. And overall, these are things that I think should be corrected on a watch of this caliber. So I have one more complaint in this area, but while we get there, I did want to mention that this watch is powered by Seiko's in-house 6R35 movement. To me, it's a direct competitor of the ETA 2824 or the Sellita 200. I know some people have had issues with this movement. I never have. For me, it's always been kind of a robust workhorse, so I don't have anything negative to say in that aspect. You're looking at a 50-hour power reserve. Stated accuracy is -15 to +25. This is running at -7. You know, I'd love for it to be a little bit closer, but that's certainly fine. You have a very nice winding motion. It is a hacking movement as well, so you get precise time setting. But this is where I'm bummed out at the quality control again. As I bring the handset around and I get the minutes hand pointed directly at 12 o'clock, you'll notice some of the hours hand is sticking out farther on the left than on the right. That's just the hands not being perfectly aligned. It's pretty close. It's not a huge deal, but again, with other watches that I've bought at this price point, it's not something that I've noticed. So in going through this one and being pretty thorough, it was just a bit of a bummer that, you know, as we get up here, the triangle is a little off to one side, the hours hand is a little off to the other. These things just tend to add up and end up being a bit of a bummer and just put a little bit of a sour taste in your mouth. When it comes to the lume, I have zero complaints. Seiko's proprietary Lume is some of the best material in the business. You have a wonderful green glow. It is potent enough to last throughout the night, so really no complaints in this department. Here we are in my 7.5 to 7 3/4 inch wrist. And the watch wears phenomenal. The comfort with those undercut edges is tremendous. I love the proportions. You know, it feels like a smaller watch while still having that nice substantial footprint. There's not much I would change about this aesthetically. I just like some of those details cleaned up. While the bracelet for this watch is very nice, I think it's at its best when it's on the green silicone strap that comes with. I love this kind of rope texture on the side. It helps to break it up very well with this flat surface in the middle. And having this green, I think, really pulls the green out of the dial. At times, this can feel more just like a black watch. Most of the time, unless you have direct or natural sunlight shining on the dial, it tends to kind of get drowned out. With the strap, it pulls it together a little bit more and I think makes it feel more special, as that green is meant to represent their 140th anniversary. I love too the hardware that Seiko uses. I think it looks very nice, kind of elevates the Overall aesthetic, although these metal keepers, as you move them up and down to try to find the right spot, do tend to pull hair a little bit, but Seiko's really come a long way with their rubber and silicone straps these last few years, and I just couldn't be any more pleased with this. If it seems as though I'm being a bit extra nitpicky with this watch, I'd have to agree. I've been pretty tough on it, but only because I love this design so much. I think the case shape and size are perfect. I love the undercut on the bottom of the case and how comfortable it makes it wear. The overall design is phenomenal. I really just think that there needs to be a couple of tweaks and really just tightening up of Seiko's quality control on this higher end of pricing for them. When you start looking at the natural competitors for this watch, you're talking about the Longines Hydro Conquest and the Oris Aquis. And when you look at those watches, I think they do a better job of making sure that whatever they're doing, they nail it. The details are all there, the alignment is all there. So while the Hydro Conquest doesn't have near as interesting of a case, at the same time what it does is so well executed that it comes off more like a premium product. I love this package, but just especially with this triangle missing out on some of the paint, it just takes away and kind of, for me, pulls it out of that same level. So if I had it all over to do again, I think I would put my $1,300 elsewhere. That said, I'm not rushing to get rid of this watch. I'll certainly hang on to it for a while in case a better deal comes along and I'm able to flip it or trade it. But it's been an interesting experience. If you feel differently about this watch or have a few points that maybe I didn't touch on, feel free to put them down below. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. That really helps in YouTube's algorithm. Also, consider subscribing. I put watch content out weekly at a minimum, and I hope to see you in the next one.